Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where the glow of candles barely pushes back the dark, where the air smells of wax and herbs, and where the sound you hear most is the shallow, anxious breathing of a woman about to bring new life into the world. This isn't the soft, pastel-painted maternity ward you're used to imagining. No, this is medieval childbirth, dim, smoky, dangerous, and oddly familiar in its mixture of pain and hope. You're about to see what it's like to be there, in that moment, in that room. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening tonight, I'd love for you to drop your location and your local time in the comments. It's always fun to see where and when these little stories find you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The door creaks as you push it open, and instantly you're swallowed by the close heat of the chamber. This isn't a grand hall of stone. It's a cramped wooden room, thick with shadows. The only light comes from a cluster of candles dripping onto a chipped saucer. Their flames dance nervously, threatening to snuff out with every draft that sneaks through the ill-fitted boards. You catch the low murmur of voices, women speaking softly, their tones serious, as if even words must tiptoe here. The smell hits you next. Beeswax, sweat, damp straw, and something metallic you can't quite place but know you'll never forget. In medieval Europe, a birth chamber was deliberately darkened, curtains pulled across even the smallest window. Light, people believed, could attract evil spirits, or worse, envy from neighbors. The less seen, the safer the mother and child. Funny to think that in a world without Instagram filters, privacy was still an obsession. You glance at the bed, rough linen sheets, damp from sweat, and perhaps something more. A wooden crucifix hangs above, tilted, one arm longer than the other. The mother groans, her voice trembling, hands clutching at the blanket, as though she could wring strength from its rough weave. You notice her lips moving, not random babble, but whispered prayers. In this room, faith and fear mingle like smoke. Historians still argue whether medieval birth spaces were more religious sanctuary or more battlefield of superstition. What you can't deny is how every object seems charged with double meaning. A candle not just for light, but for warding off the devil. A jug of water not just for thirst, but for symbolic washing of sin. Even the chair in the corner might double as a birthing stool if things grow urgent. You shift closer and realize how small the chamber feels with so many bodies inside. There's the mother, pale and trembling. There are two older women fussing at her side, one adjusting the blanket, the other whispering in her ear. And you, the quiet observer, noticing how no men have been allowed into this room, not even the husband. Birth here is women's work, secret and solemn. A candle guttering suddenly spits wax onto the floor. The women jump, then laugh, the tension breaking for just a second. Someone jokes that it's a sign the baby is stubborn, clinging to its mother's ribs like a barnacle. Humor, even here, survives, like a tiny rebellion against the crushing seriousness of what's at stake. But you can't shake the awareness that death walks the room as surely as new life. In medieval Europe, estimates suggest 1 in 3 women might die in childbirth across her lifetime. Imagine carrying that knowledge every time your belly swelled. No amount of candles or whispered charms could banish that shadow completely. And yet, for all the fear, There's an odd intimacy here, the soft hum of voices, the rhythm of breath, the flickering shadows on wood. It feels like a vigil, like keeping watch at the edge of two worlds. You notice how the women lean into the mother's cries, rocking in sympathy, as if their own muscles ache in memory of past births. One curious tidbit slips your way. Some families placed iron scissors under the bed to ward off malicious spirits who might cut the baby's chance of survival. Whether it worked or not, you can't say, but at least you know medieval people loved a good pun, even in their superstitions. The candles burn lower, fat with wax. The mother grips her blanket tighter, her moans deepening into something that makes your own chest ache. The chamber is holding its breath now, the air waiting, the women waiting, you waiting. And with every flicker of shadow, the line between life and loss feels razor thin. The sound of hurried footsteps rattles across the packed earth floor, and the women already inside know what it means. The midwife has been summoned. You glance toward the doorway as she pushes through, brisk, confident, and a little out of breath. Her hair is hidden beneath a worn linen veil, her apron stained with herbs and oils, and her hands, large, capable, slightly cracked, carry the authority of someone who has done this 100 times before. In a world without doctors for ordinary folk, she is the expert. She doesn't ask permission to enter. She simply takes over the room, setting down a bundle that clinks faintly as it lands. A leather pouch of herbs, strips of cloth, maybe a knife if things go badly. The other women make space, deferential but relieved. After all, she's the one who knows the prayers, the potions, the little tricks that might keep both mother and child alive. You notice she doesn't pull out any parchment diploma. In fact, she's not formally trained at all. Medieval midwives learned through apprenticeship, usually watching mothers, aunts, or neighbors deliver baby after baby until the process etched itself into their bones. Some were licensed by local authorities, sworn to uphold church teaching and avoid witchcraft. Others simply worked by reputation, their hands steady, their names whispered with gratitude. Historians still argue whether these women were highly respected professionals or tolerated out of necessity, often scapegoated when tragedy struck. The midwife leans over the laboring mother, murmuring something you can't catch, though the tone is steadying, like telling a frightened horse it won't bolt. She feels the belly, presses gently, nods to herself. Then, almost casually, she begins to unpack her kit, sprigs of rosemary for fumigation, a vial of oil for anointing, maybe even a strip of parchment scrawled with a saint's name. Medicine, magic, and faith, all in one bag. You lean closer and catch a smell that makes you wrinkle your nose. Rue and mugwort, herbs often burned in childbirth for protection. They believe the smoke chased away evil spirits lurking for a weak soul. A quirky tidbit: some midwives also carried dried toads, yes, real ones, hung in little pouches as charms to draw out the baby. You can imagine the look on a modern OBGYN's face if someone showed up with an amphibian in their scrub's pocket. The mother's cries rise in pitch, and the midwife immediately snaps her fingers at one of the women. A kettle of hot water is brought over, not for sterilization in the modern sense, but for warm compresses, washing, maybe even brewing a quick drink. The phrase, "boil water," from old films probably makes you chuckle, but here it's quite literal. It's the catch-all solution, the medieval version of Googling symptoms at 3 a.m. She kneels by the bed, whispering prayers half under her breath, half aloud. "Saint Margaret, guard this birth, she mutters, invoking the patron saint of childbirth. Margaret, according to legend, once burst from the belly of a dragon unharmed, a story oddly comforting to a woman pushing out a child. Whether it's theology or just a good pep talk, you can't deny the effect. The mother grips tighter, eyes squeezing shut, as if Margaret herself is in the room. A sudden groan, deep and guttural, rolls out of the mother. The midwife places one hand firmly on her shoulder, the other against the swell of her stomach. Breathe, she instructs, not in the yoga class sense, but in a rhythm meant to prevent fainting. Medieval people didn't know much about oxygen levels, but they knew a panicked woman was harder to deliver. One of the younger women in the room looks nervous, chewing her lip, shifting from foot to foot. You realize she's probably here to learn, to watch, absorb, maybe one day become a midwife herself. It's not exactly medical school, but it's the same principle, knowledge passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. And it's effective enough that, despite the grim odds, many mothers and babies did survive. Still, the room feels tense, as though everyone knows how thin the line is. Midwives carried both power and peril. If things went well, they were heroes. If things went badly, they might be accused of negligence, or worse, of witchcraft. A baby born dead? Perhaps she cursed it. A mother who didn't survive? Perhaps she angered God. The irony is sharp. The very women keeping life going were sometimes blamed for death itself. The midwife ignores all that, at least outwardly. She moves with brisk efficiency, rubbing oil into her hands, checking the linens, muttering about whether the stool has been prepared. She looks like someone doing a job they know too well, and you realize she probably delivered most of the people in this very village. Imagine being greeted every market day by dozens of pairs of eyes who first saw the world because of you. The mother screams again, her voice cracking, sweat running down her temples. The midwife leans in close, her face calm but focused. She mutters another charm, this one almost sing-song, the rhythm soothing even to you. It blends Latin and local dialect, half prayer, half poem, like an incantation. You wonder how many centuries that exact phrase has echoed in rooms like this. The candles flicker, shadows shift, and for a moment the midwife's face looks older than the room itself. You sense the weight of all the women who came before her, hands working in dim chambers, relying on herbs, faith, and stubborn willpower. No textbooks, no antiseptic, no epidurals, just tradition, trial, and the occasional dried toad. The midwife's bag lies open on the small stool, its contents spilling like a magician's kit. Sprigs of dried herbs tied with twine, lengths of cloth, tiny pouches filled with who knows what, and a worn wooden cross polished smooth by countless fingers. You lean in closer, curious, because in this room, tools aren't just tools. They're shields against everything that might go wrong. She picks up a small knife with a short, curved blade. It gleams faintly in the candlelight, not like something for surgery, but more like a farmer's tool. Its edge, though, has seen service, cutting cords, trimming cloth, maybe even scratching protective signs into wood. In medieval thinking, sharp objects could cut evil influences. The irony of waving a knife around a woman in labor, lost on them. To her attendants, the sight of that blade might feel strangely reassuring. Next comes the herbs: rosemary, mugwort, sage, all stuffed into little cloth bundles, sometimes burned, sometimes steeped in hot water, sometimes just waved in front of the mother's nose as if the smell alone could coax the baby out. Historians still argue whether these herbal rituals were more about real medicinal properties or simply about belief. Modern science admits some herbs did ease cramps or calm nerves, but others were little more than medieval aromatherapy. The women fuss with the room itself, arranging objects in deliberate ways. A comb is placed beneath the mother's pillow because untangling hair was thought to help untangle the birth canal. A door latch is unfastened because locked doors were believed to lock the womb. Even knots in clothing were loosened. The fear was that any binding might prevent the baby from passing. It's a quirky, almost poetic way of thinking. Every physical barrier mirrored in the body, every untying a gesture of hope. You spot a curious item, a belt with script embroidered along its length. This is no fashion statement. It's a birthing girdle, often inscribed with prayers or biblical verses, sometimes blessed by a priest. The mother might wrap it around her waist or hold it across her belly. The belief? That holy words carried literal power, pressing safety into her body. You can't help but picture it as the medieval version of a weighted blanket. Comforting, maybe, even if the science is questionable. And then there are the truly strange tools. A pouch of animal bones, a scrap of parchment scrawled with symbols, maybe even a stone polished to a shine. These aren't random trinkets. Each one has meaning. The bone might be from a saint's relic, the parchment a charm against demons, the stone a fertility token. Superstition and religion blur here so thoroughly that it's hard to know where one ends and the other begins. The mother cries out, clutching at her blanket. The midwife slips a string of beads into her hands, urging her to squeeze with each pain. At first you think it's simply distraction, but then you realize those beads carry prayers. Each squeeze, each whispered word is meant to drive away spirits said to lurk in the corners of the room. In medieval minds, childbirth wasn't just a medical ordeal, it was a spiritual battle. Someone murmurs about St. Margaret again, and the midwife responds by placing a tiny figurine near the bed, barely taller than your thumb. It's made of wax, carved into the shape of a saint, holding a cross. The flame of a candle nearby catches its glossy surface, making it look alive. The figurine will melt slowly through the night, symbolizing divine presence, but also measuring the long passage of time. You glance around at the faces in the room. They are tense but determined, and you realize these rituals, whether or not they work, serve a second purpose. They keep people calm. They give women something to do, some small control over the uncontrollable. Modern birthing rooms have beeping monitors and sterile gloves. Medieval ones had rosemary smoke and open latches. Different tools, same need, reassurance. And then there's the whispering. You strain your ears and catch snatches of charms, half Latin, half vernacular, phrases passed down so long no one remembers where they started. One goes something like, "As Christ opened the tomb, so may this womb be opened." It's bold, almost startling, but it reveals a mindset. Everything in life mirrored Scripture, even childbirth. The midwife pauses, looking around, then orders someone to fetch holy water. When it arrives in a chipped jug, she sprinkles a few drops across the floor, the bed, the mother's forehead. It's both blessing and protection, washing away not dirt, but danger. The droplets glisten in the candlelight before vanishing into the linen. And just when you think you've cataloged all the strangeness, one of the older women pulls out a small charm shaped like a key, and ties it to the bedpost. To unlock the womb, she explains, matter of fact. You can't help but smirk. Imagine telling a modern midwife you've tied your house keys to the crib just in case. Still, beneath the humor, there's something striking here. Every tool, every object, every ritual reflects both fear and hope. The knife to cut evil, the herb to ease pain, the girdle to protect, the key to unlock. Together, they form a fragile net stretched across the abyss. And in this dim room, with death only ever a breath away, even the strangest charm feels worth trying. The mother groans again, sweat soaking her hairline. The midwife kneels beside her, calm and steady, as if all these tools and charms are extensions of her own hands. You realize this isn't just superstition. It's a choreography, a way of making sense out of chaos. And tonight, you're part of the audience, watching an ancient drama unfold.
The hours crawl, and with them you begin to sense the weight the mother has carried long before this night. Her body is stretched, heavy, aching. Every muscle trembles under strain, and yet this moment is only the final test of a long journey. Pregnancy in the Middle Ages was not a glowing, flower-crowned experience. It was a gamble of survival, lived against a backdrop of malnutrition, superstition, and constant physical labor. You notice the woman's hands, calloused from years of grinding grain, kneading bread, hauling water from the village well. Even in her last months of pregnancy, she likely never stopped working. Rest was not a luxury afforded to most medieval women. You imagine her bending over fields or crouching by the hearth, swollen belly straining against her rough wool dress. Every day was a reminder that her body wasn't entirely her own. It was her family's, her husband's, her community's future. And her diet? Forget prenatal vitamins. A peasant mother might go days without enough meat, relying instead on pottage, thick stew of grains and vegetables, and bread that was sometimes dark and coarse. Calcium, iron, and protein were often scarce, leaving her teeth brittle, her body weakened. Historians still argue whether elite women, with their access to feasts and richer foods, actually fared better. Rich diets sometimes caused their own problems, like gout or gestational complications. In a strange twist, the poor might have been leaner but more physically conditioned for childbirth. You hear a whisper from one of the older women, advice about drinking ale with butter to lubricate the child's path. Another suggests carrying a piece of coral for protection. Medieval pregnancies were saturated with folk wisdom. Some women were told to avoid looking at ugly people or animals, for fear the baby would resemble them. Others were instructed to eat almonds to ensure intelligence, or apples for beauty. A quirky tidbit: in some regions, women smeared their bellies with goose fat, convinced it would make the skin more slippery for delivery. Of course, not every belief was so harmless. Some advice bordered on dangerous. Women were cautioned not to eat certain hot foods, like garlic or onions, for fear of overheating the womb. Heavy lifting was discouraged, though in reality, very few could afford to avoid it. And let's not forget the church's influence. Mothers were expected to maintain piety, confess sins, and pray often, because a sinful pregnancy could supposedly doom both mother and child. Imagine the stress of laboring with the fear that your soul's standing might tip the scales. The mother shifts on the bed, moaning, sweat streaking down her temples. You realize how extraordinary her endurance is. 9 months of carrying a child without modern health care, no ultrasounds, no vitamins, no blood pressure checks, just instinct, observation, and hope. She probably counted kicks in her belly, not as medical data, but as reassurance from God. The midwife checks her pulse, then nods. The women around whisper encouragement, but you sense how their words echo centuries of shared experience. They know what she faces because they've lived it. Their advice is a chorus of survival, woven from generations of births that ended both in triumph and tragedy. A young girl, watching nervously from the corner, pipes up. My aunt says a woman mustn't step over a grave while carrying, or the baby will be born with a clubfoot. The room chuckles wearily, and one of the older women retorts, then half this village would limp. Even here, with stakes so high, humor slips through like a crack of light. But you notice something else. The mother's belly shows faint stretch marks, silvery against her skin. This isn't her first birth. She's done this before, maybe many times. Medieval women might bear a dozen children in their lifetimes, though only half might live beyond early childhood. You feel a pang, realizing how normalized loss was. A mother's identity was not her own body, but her ability to produce and nurture life. Still, there's resilience in her eyes. She clutches at the birthing girdle, lips moving in prayer. Every superstition, every herb, every whispered charm is part of her armor. It's not blind faith, it's survival strategy. She's endured months of discomfort, poor nutrition, and endless advice from everyone around her, and yet here she is, fighting to bring another life into the world. Historians still argue whether medieval women viewed pregnancy as constant dread or as simply part of the rhythm of life. Maybe it was both, fear and acceptance, woven together like the rough linen sheets beneath her. The midwife leans in, pressing her hands gently against the woman's belly, nodding with approval. The baby is turning, moving, preparing. The room holds its breath. All the months of swollen ankles, restless nights, and whispered charms have led to this moment. And as the mother groans again, teeth clenched, eyes shining with sweat and pain, you can almost feel her body begging, let this burden finally end.
The midwife steps back and gestures toward the wooden stool tucked in the corner. Its surface is worn smooth by decades of births, the edges rounded by countless hands. This is the birthing stool, a tool so ordinary it almost fades into the background, yet its importance cannot be overstated. You trudge closer, imagining the mother lowering herself onto it, legs spread and balanced, gripping the side handles for leverage, her body guided by centuries of trial and error. The stool is simple, 3 legs, a slightly concave seat, often carved from oak or beech. Some midwives place a hole in the center to make delivery easier, but many just rely on the mother's positioning. Unlike modern hospitals, where beds adjust and monitors beep, medieval women depended on gravity, angles, and their own endurance. The midwife offers guidance, sometimes pressing gently on the lower back, sometimes adjusting the mother's position to align the baby properly. You notice how every shift, every small movement is measured, almost ritualistic. The women around the mother murmur encouragement, urging her to breathe, to sway with the rhythm of pain. Push when you feel it, one whispers. Another hands her a small bowl of warm water to dab on her forehead. There's a choreography here, every action designed to make the impossible possible. And you realize the birthing stool is more than furniture. It's the stage for this delicate, dangerous drama. You glance at the stool again and notice carvings. A tiny cross scratched into the wood, a heart-shaped mark, maybe initials of mothers long gone. There's an almost ghostly continuity here. Every woman who sat here added her presence, whether consciously or not. It's both practical and symbolic, a seat for survival and remembrance. The midwife checks the mother's legs, adjusting them on the stool's handles. Sweat glistens on her brow, her lips quivering. Almost there, the midwife murmurs, her voice low but firm. She moves with precision, guiding the mother's body through angles and pressures that you, a mere observer, can't fully grasp. This is not guesswork. It is skill honed over decades. Historians still argue whether the positioning on a birthing stool genuinely reduced complications or simply made midwives' work easier. Either way, It's effective enough to have survived the centuries. Nearby, one of the older women produces a small bundle of herbs, draping it over the mother's chest. Its scent, lavender, rosemary, and a hint of something sharp, fills the room. Medieval people believed these smells could relax the womb, distract the mother from pain, or even repel evil spirits. You snort quietly. Modern aromatherapy has nothing on this kind of high-stakes ritual. The mother shifts, groaning, and the midwife presses a hand against her back. "Lean forward," she instructs. The mother complies, body trembling, and you can almost feel the tension in every muscle fiber. Every contraction is a reminder of how much trust is being placed in this simple wooden stool, these experienced hands, and the centuries of collective wisdom crammed into this tiny room. A quirky tidbit floats to your mind. Some midwives sprinkled salt on the stool before use, thinking it absorbed evil spirits and poor fortune. The salt might have helped keep the seat dry or clean, but its mystical symbolism lingered, a dual-purpose charm. You glance at the stool again, imagining grains of salt catching candlelight, each one a tiny hope. Outside, a rooster crows in the distance. Time in the medieval village is measured not by clocks, but by natural cues. The sun rising, birds singing, and the night stretching its black velvet across the sky. Inside, the mother presses against the stool, breathing raggedly. Her body is tired but prepared, strengthened by months of gestation, laboring instincts, and sheer stubbornness. The midwife guides her gently, whispering instructions and encouragement. The women around her hum soft tunes, a mix of prayer and lullaby, trying to keep her spirit steady. You realize that the birthing stool is as much about positioning as it is about community support. Without it, this room, these hands, these rituals might not be enough. And just when you think the stool is an ordinary piece of furniture, you understand its real significance. It is the interface between the mother's body, the baby's journey, and the midwife's expertise. Without it, labor would be not just harder, but riskier, a reminder of how ingenious, practical, and oddly elegant medieval solutions could be. The mother grips the sides, legs trembling, eyes squeezed shut. You hold your breath with her. Every creak of the wooden stool echoes through the room, a small living drumbeat in the rhythm of life and anticipation. The midwife leans closer to the mother, whispering a prayer that drifts in the candlelit room like a soft fog. She holds a small vial of oil, golden and thick, and dips her fingers into it, rubbing it across the mother's hands and chest. It glistens in the flickering light, a combination of practicality and ritual. Oils were believed to ease pain and lubricate the birth canal, but just as importantly, they carried symbolic weight, anointment as protection, an outward sign of divine care. Nearby, a tiny wooden crucifix is pressed into the mother's hand. Its presence is more than ceremonial. In the medieval mindset, physical objects could carry power. Touching a sacred relic was thought to provide both comfort and spiritual intervention. Some families even used relics of local saints, carried in velvet pouches, believing they could ward off complications or evil spirits. You can't help but imagine a saint sitting somewhere above the room, silently rooting for the mother. The mother's breaths come faster now. You watch her lips move in whispered recitation of the Lord's Prayer or some local charm she learned from her mother or grandmother. Faith, superstition, and physical technique are inseparable here. Historians still argue whether these spiritual practices directly influenced survival or were psychological aids that gave women courage under extreme duress. Either way, they matter. The room itself seems to lean in. Every flicker of candlelight illuminates trembling hands, strained muscles, and the occasional stray hair plastered to the mother's sweaty forehead. You notice the subtle rituals in place. A small bell on the windowsill that rings if the wind moves it, believed to scare away lurking spirits. A bowl of salt by the threshold. A faint sprinkling of holy water across the floor. Objects and actions merge seamlessly into a protective choreography. The women in the circle hum a lullaby, a low, repetitive tune that seems to stretch time and calm nerves. Someone whispers that humming aligns the mother's breathing, which is surprisingly effective. You wonder if the tune has been repeated across centuries, carried from village to village, each note an echo of countless other births. It's remarkable how music, simple as it is, becomes a practical aid in labor. Then the midwife retrieves a small bundle of herbs, crushed and tied in muslin. She holds it beneath the mother's nose, letting the pungent aroma fill her senses. Mugwort, rosemary, lavender, all were believed to promote relaxation and encourage the baby to descend. Quirkier still, some midwives included dried toad or other animal bits in the mixture, meant to draw the baby into the world. You shiver, imagining the scent, and laugh quietly. Modern aromatherapy would blush. A low murmur of reassurance flows through the women's circle. Each offers advice, half practical, half spiritual. One instructs, focus on the pain, not the fear, while another says, Saint Margaret is watching. It's a layered support system combining experience, observation, and tradition. Even today, we talk about birthing coaches or doulas. In medieval villages, this was the original human safety net. The mother grips the birthing girdle tightly. The strip of cloth embroidered with prayers and symbols isn't just tradition. It's tactile comfort. Each knot, each stitch, is a reminder that someone has invested care into this moment, that history itself is wrapped around her. You notice the midwife presses lightly on the lower abdomen, coaxing the baby into the right position. This is the blend of body knowledge and ritual that defines medieval birth. Instinct, skill, and faith intertwined. Historians still argue whether girdles, charms, and herbs improved outcomes or simply comforted the mother psychologically. But sitting here, watching her squeeze the crucifix, inhale the herbs, and respond to gentle guidance, you realize that psychological resilience might be the most critical factor of all. A candle guttering splashes wax onto the floor. Someone mutters a joke. Looks like St. Margaret is shedding tears already, and the tension breaks momentarily. Humor, even in the midst of fear, is vital. The mother laughs weakly, and you notice how human the scene feels, despite the centuries that separate you. The midwife leans in again, murmuring instructions, pressing lightly, encouraging the mother. Everything in the room, the candles, the oil, the girdle, the herbs, the prayers, is orchestrated toward one goal, the safe arrival of the child. You can almost feel the weight of all previous generations of women who sat here, whispered here, prayed here. Their combined presence is woven into every object, every gesture. The mother arches back slightly, gripping the stool. A contraction grips her body, long and relentless. You feel the tension yourself, a sympathetic tightening in your chest. And as the room waits with bated breath, you realize that the blend of sacred and practical, the prayers, the charms, the herbs, the stool, is the essence of medieval childbirth, a delicate dance between body, mind, and spirit. The air in the room shifts slightly, as more women gather around the mother, forming a tight, protective circle. Each face tells a story: concern, focus, experience, and just a touch of nervous humor. These women are the mother's support network, her village army in miniature, here to witness and assist, to share knowledge passed down through generations. You feel the closeness pressing in, the scent of herbs, sweat, and wax mingling with the soft murmur of conversation. It's intimate and intense, a space where only women belong, a sanctuary and a battleground at once. You notice the subtle gestures that guide the labor: a hand on a shoulder, a gentle squeeze of the mother's arm, a whispered reminder to breathe. This is more than emotional support. It is tactical. Midwives and elder women coach the mother in positions that will help her body work with gravity, suggesting small shifts to ease contractions. Historians still argue whether these adjustments significantly improved outcomes, but watching the synergy between body and guidance is mesmerizing. The circle hums low melodies, some soft prayers, some ancient lullabies. The vibrations travel through the mother's body, a rhythm she can feel in her bones. One woman rocks her own baby gently, the lullaby reflecting off the walls, calming the room in a way that transcends words. You realize that medieval births were multi-sensory experiences, combining touch, sound, and sight in a way modern hospitals can rarely replicate. One of the elder women leans forward, offering a small piece of bread soaked in ale, instructing the mother to sip slowly. "It helps energy," she murmurs. Odd as it sounds to you, the mixture of carbohydrates and liquid likely gave the mother a bit of stamina for the long night ahead. Quirky tidbit: in some villages, women chewed herbs and spat them into the mother's mouth to ease contractions, a practice both strange and slightly hilarious to imagine. The mother's hands clutch at her girdle and the midwife's steadying fingers. You notice beads of sweat forming along her hairline, trickling down to her neck. Pain is omnipresent, but so is determination. The women around her offer words, not just encouragement, but practical instruction. Lean forward, push with the next wave, breathe through the back. The labor becomes a shared effort, a choreography that relies on collective memory and instinct. You see a younger woman observing closely, eyes wide but attentive. She is here to learn, and every gesture the midwife makes is a lesson. In medieval Europe, apprenticeship in midwifery was hands-on and immediate, seeing, touching, guiding, and absorbing techniques that textbooks of the era could scarcely capture. This living classroom ensures that knowledge is preserved and refined over generations. Someone in the circle murmurs a superstition: "Do not let a cat walk across the threshold tonight, or the child will be bewitched." The women laugh softly, but the cautionary tone lingers. Folk wisdom in childbirth was as much about cultural cohesion as about safety. Rituals and taboos gave a semblance of control over a wildly unpredictable process. You chuckle quietly, imagining a modern nurse chasing a cat out of a delivery room. The mother groans, arching over the stool, sweat soaking her hair and back. You notice how every woman in the room is hyper-aware of her body, ready to intervene, adjust, or provide comfort. Their shared experience amplifies the mother's own instincts, creating a network of vigilance that feels both ancient and deeply human. A small charm is placed on the windowsill, a tiny figurine carved from bone. It is meant to protect the mother from malevolent spirits said to linger at liminal moments. These objects may have had no physical effect, but the psychological comfort was palpable. The belief in protection combined with practical care, forms a complex safety net in this candlelit chamber. The hum of voices continues, punctuated by groans, gasps, and whispered prayers. Each woman in the circle has a role: guardian, advisor, comforter, or observer. The mother relies on them instinctively, and they respond with skill honed over decades. You feel a mix of awe and tension. The labor is long, painful, and unpredictable, yet every gesture, every whispered word, every small object contributes to the unfolding drama. Historians still debate the relative influence of superstition versus practical midwifery, but watching the circle in action, you realize the two are inseparable. Comfort, guidance, and skill blend seamlessly with charms, prayers, and herbs. The room becomes a living testament to resilience, shared wisdom, and human ingenuity in the face of danger. And in this dimly lit chamber, with shadows flickering across the walls, you understand the power of community, not just to witness birth, but to actively participate, to lend strength, courage, and hope when survival hangs in the balance. Hours stretch forward like thick honey, and the room hums with the rhythm of labor. Contractions arrive in waves, unstoppable and unyielding, each one demanding every ounce of the mother's strength. You watch her lean into the stool, legs braced, arms gripping the side handles. Her breaths come shallow and fast, a cadence punctuated by low groans that echo off the wooden walls. Time feels elastic. Minutes stretch into hours, and the flickering candles cast shadows that seem to move with the mother's pain. The women in the circle move around her in quiet synchronization. One dabs a damp cloth on the mother's brow, another whispers instructions. Breathe through the back, push with the next wave. The midwife crouches beside her, hands steady on her hips, adjusting her angle to guide the baby. Every gesture is precise, honed by experience, and repeated countless times over decades. Historians still argue whether these physical techniques genuinely reduced maternal mortality, but you can't deny their calming effect. You notice how humor surfaces even in the thick of tension. One of the elder women mutters, "If the baby comes out with a head like a turnip, at least it'll have a good neck for a hat." The younger women giggle quietly, and even the mother manages a breathless chuckle. Laughter in the middle of pain seems almost like rebellion, a reminder that humans persist in levity, even in dire moments. Strange remedies are offered with grave seriousness. Someone suggests a poultice of boiled herbs applied to the mother's abdomen to encourage the baby down. Another whispers about eagle dung, a supposedly powerful aid that will hasten delivery. You wrinkle your nose, but can't help but admire the ingenuity, however misguided. Quirky tidbits like this pepper the labor, a blend of folk science and superstition. The mother arches back, gripping the birthing stool as sweat streams down her face. Her groans rise, echoing off the walls. The midwife murmurs instructions, pressing gently against her lower back, encouraging her to sway, to lean forward, to work with the pain. You realize how intimately the midwife must know the human body. Every pressure point, every contraction, every angle of leverage is calculated. The women's circle hums a soft, repetitive tune, like a river flowing through the room. Its rhythm aligns with the mother's breathing, and you notice her shoulders relax slightly during each note. This combination of sound, touch, and communal presence is a masterclass in multisensory support, long before modern birthing coaches or epidurals. At one point, someone brings forward a bowl of warm water and wine. The mother sips carefully, the liquid giving her energy to endure another wave. The practice is common, intended to prevent fainting or dizziness, though in modern terms it's more symbolic than medical. Still, you understand the reasoning. Every small boost, every sip, every gesture counts in a prolonged labor. You see a young apprentice midwife scribbling notes in the corner, observing patterns, recording reactions, perhaps preparing for the day she will guide a mother herself. In this room, education is hands-on and urgent. Mistakes are costly, and learning is a matter of life and death. You feel a mix of admiration and tension, knowing how critical each instruction is. The mother's cries intensify, sweat soaking her dress. Her strength seems to ebb and flow like the tide, and the women around her adjust, offering compresses, prayers, and whispered encouragement. The room becomes almost a single organism, breathing, moving, living in response to the mother's labor. Historians still debate the efficacy of certain folk remedies, but watching the interplay of skill, ritual, and sheer determination, you realize that survival was never just a matter of medicine. It was about community, psychology, and centuries of inherited wisdom. As another contraction grips her, you notice the subtle cues, the tightening of her fists, the flare of her nostrils, the arch of her back. The room braces with her, every heart beating in synchrony, every eye alert. You understand that this long night is both physical ordeal and shared ritual, a passage measured in sweat, breath, and collective anticipation. Amid the rhythmic groans and whispered prayers, the midwife reaches for her collection of birth recipes, strange concoctions designed to coax the baby downward. You watch with a mix of fascination and disbelief. Some are herbal, steeped teas or poultices meant to relax muscles or stimulate contractions. Others are far stranger, eagle dung, buttered ale, or even mashed roots of plants, whose names make you hesitate before repeating them aloud. The belief is simple. Nature holds answers to the challenges of birth if only you know the right combination. A younger woman in the circle hesitates, holding a small vial of melted wax infused with herbs. She leans close and whispers, "It's supposed to make the womb soft." You can't decide whether to chuckle or recoil. These remedies might seem absurd to a modern mind, yet they were all grounded in observation, passed down orally through generations. Quirky, yes, but also ingenious, given the absence of formal medical training or surgical intervention. The midwife carefully presents a small bowl of her herbal mixture to the mother. She instructs, "Sip slowly, with prayer in your heart. Every act is deliberate. Nothing is left to chance." The mother drinks hesitantly, grimacing at the bitterness. You notice a few drops spill onto the linen, the smell pungent but oddly comforting, filling the chamber with a sense of purpose. Historians still argue whether these concoctions had real physiological effects or whether their benefit was largely psychological, but the ritual itself clearly eased anxiety. The other women in the circle offer minor interventions, a gentle massage of the lower back, a warm compress on the abdomen, a whispered reminder to lean forward. Every action, no matter how small, carries weight. Even a simple tickle of the soles of her feet or the pressing of knuckles along tense muscles is meant to encourage the baby's passage. The midwife coordinates all of these movements like a conductor, orchestrating the room's collective energy. Some advice is purely folkloric. "Hang a garlic clove above the door," one woman says. "The baby will come swiftly, and spirits will be kept at bay." The circle nods in solemn agreement, and you can't help but marvel at the confidence with which superstition and skill coexist. In this world, Empirical observation and mystical belief are woven tightly together, each reinforcing the other. A sudden sharp contraction grips the mother, her back arching, sweat soaking through her dress. The midwife leans in, pressing gently at the small of her back, murmuring prayers under her breath. The mother clutches the birthing girdle, beads sliding through her fingers. This tactile engagement, holding sacred or symbolic items, is as much part of the ritual as any potion or herb. You notice how the mother's focus narrows entirely to these small objects, almost as if they were extensions of her own body. The night stretches onward, and fatigue sets in for everyone present. Yet the circle remains vigilant. You realize that their persistence is more than practical. It is communal, almost sacred. Labor in the Middle Ages was dangerous not just for the mother but also for the newborn, and survival often depended on the mother's strength combined with the skill and attentiveness of those around her. The midwife reaches for another recipe, a poultice made from butter and crushed herbs. She rubs it gently on the mother's abdomen, whispering instructions. The aroma is sharp and earthy, filling the room and mingling with the smell of sweat and candle wax. You shiver slightly, imagining this olfactory cocktail as a form of both distraction and focus, something to anchor the mother's senses amid pain. The mother groans again, louder now, her voice echoing off the wooden walls. One of the women murmurs, "It's coming," and the midwife nods subtly, pressing gently with her hands. You see her eyes flicker to the candle flames, then back to the mother, monitoring the delicate balance of contractions, timing, and energy. Historians still argue whether certain poultices or ingested mixtures had measurable effects on labor duration. But sitting here, watching the choreography unfold, you understand that their value may not lie in chemistry alone. It is in ritual, focus, and the creation of a shared narrative that guides the body through the perilous night. Even amidst the odd, sometimes unsettling remedies, the room exudes determination. Every strange recipe, every whispered charm, every careful touch contributes to a single goal: safe passage for mother and child. And you, standing on the edge of this circle, can feel the electric tension of history in motion, a moment suspended between pain, hope, and human ingenuity.
The labor continues, relentless and unyielding, and the mother's cries grow sharper, more urgent. Every contraction feels like a physical negotiation between body and baby, a negotiation that seems to stretch on endlessly. You notice the subtle ways the midwife guides her. A slight adjustment of the shoulders, a gentle press on the lower back, a whispered instruction timed with the mother's rhythm. Every movement is deliberate, a dance of skill honed over decades. The birthing stool creaks under her weight as she shifts forward, gripping the handles with white-knuckled intensity. This simple wooden tool, worn smooth by countless generations, holds her body in perfect alignment. Without it, gravity would work against her, contractions would be more taxing, and the baby's descent more complicated. Historians still argue whether birthing stools significantly reduced complications, but there's no doubt they made a mother's body more capable of enduring labor. You notice a curious charm hanging from the ceiling, a small silver ring threaded with colored threads. It wobbles gently with each footstep in the room. Some midwives believed such objects could catch evil spirits before they reached the mother. Quirky as it seems, the charm adds a layer of psychological reassurance. Even if it had no physical effect, it allowed the mother and attendants to feel some control over a terrifyingly unpredictable process. The midwife's hands glide over the mother's abdomen, palpating, encouraging, guiding. She murmurs, "Now, push with the wave," and the mother responds instinctively, rocking her hips, tightening her core. The rhythm of movement is mirrored by the humming of the women surrounding her, a low, almost meditative sound. It's strange to think that sound and touch, more than medicine, are keeping this birth alive. Someone brings a bowl of warm water and linen to dab at the mother's forehead and neck. You notice how these small comforts, seemingly mundane, have a profound effect, cooling her skin, grounding her attention, and giving her a tangible sensation to counteract the intensity of pain. Even modern birthing coaches emphasize similar strategies, though in more sanitized forms. A young apprentice midwife watches closely, hands folded, eyes wide. She is learning not from books, but from observation, absorbing gestures, timing, and responses. This hands-on apprenticeship is crucial in a world without formal medical education for ordinary folk. Mistakes could be deadly, and learning from experience is not optional. It is survival. The mother's groans reach a crescendo. Her face is streaked with sweat, lips parted, eyes squeezed shut. She squeezes the birthing girdle tightly, and the beads slide between her fingers. The combination of tactile comfort, ritual significance, and sheer physical engagement helps her body navigate the labor. Every small object, the girdle, the beads, the crucifix, the charms, becomes a focus, a psychological anchor. The midwife checks the mother's positioning, then instructs one of the women to apply a warm poultice of herbs to the lower belly. The smell is pungent, earthy, almost suffocating, but it serves a purpose: stimulation, comfort, and symbolic assistance. Folk medicine and practical aid converge seamlessly. You catch yourself imagining the scent lingering, the heat from the compress, and the collective energy of the room supporting the mother. A lullaby hums again, and the rhythm seems to align with the mother's breathing. The contractions are relentless, yet there is a strange harmony in the chaos. This is teamwork in its most primal form: body, hands, voice, and faith converging to bring life into the world. Historians still debate the degree to which these rituals, chants, charms, poultices, actually influenced outcomes. But watching it in practice, you realize that even if the effect was symbolic, it created structure, focus, and shared intent. In this chamber, every object, every touch, every sound contributes to the sacred, dangerous art of medieval birth. And as the mother rocks against the stool, sweat streaming, muscles trembling, you can feel the tension in the room tighten. All eyes are on her, all hearts beating with her. The labor is still long, but the rhythm of effort and hope is undeniable, a living testament to resilience, tradition, and communal courage. The night stretches on, and you begin to notice the subtle changes in the mother's body. Her breaths come in shallow gasps, chest rising and falling with increasing urgency. Every contraction seems to twist her muscles, and yet she leans into them, guided by instinct, practice, and the midwife's firm hands. The sweat glistening along her temples drips onto the birthing stool, darkening the worn wood beneath her. This is a crucible of human endurance, and the room's energy bends to accommodate it. The midwife reaches for a small wooden implement, nothing more than a thin, spatula-like tool, and uses it to gently nudge the mother's abdomen in the correct direction. You flinch slightly. Modern medicine would never allow such improvisation, but her confidence is palpable. Decades of births have taught her where to apply pressure, when to adjust, and how to coax the baby without harm. Historians still argue whether these manual interventions sped delivery or merely offered reassurance, but the precision is undeniable. Nearby, a small pouch of powdered herbs is sprinkled onto a damp cloth. The scent, camphor, mugwort, and a touch of frankincense, fills the air. Some believe inhaling the aroma relaxes the uterus. Others insist it wards off malevolent spirits. Quirky as it seems, the smell has a grounding effect on the mother and the circle alike. You breathe it in cautiously and admit there's something oddly calming about it. The circle of women hums again, a low, continuous vibration. The sound seems to synchronize with the mother's breathing, a shared rhythm that almost feels alive. One of the older women strokes the mother's hair, another presses a warm compress to her back, while the midwife murmurs instructions like an unseen metronome. This isn't just comfort, it's coordination, a collective intelligence focused entirely on survival. At one point, the mother's hand brushes against a small figurine of Saint Margaret resting near her side. She grips it tightly, whispering a prayer, and you realize how physical objects act as anchors in this high-stress scenario. The birthing girdle, the beads, the saint figurine, each one provides reassurance, focus, and psychological stability, essential in a world without anesthesia or pain relief. The midwife checks the mother's pulse, then nods to herself. "It's nearly time," she whispers, though the words are as much a signal to the attendants as to the mother. The tension in the room thickens, but there's also a quiet surge of anticipation. The culmination of months of pregnancy and hours of labor is imminent. The apprentice watches, absorbing every subtle instruction: how to support the mother's back, when to suggest breathing techniques, when to pass herbs or compresses. In this hands-on education, mistakes are costly, and precision is everything. You feel a pang of awe, imagining how many lives depended on this apprenticeship, passing knowledge from one generation to the next. Someone in the corner murmurs a superstition about stars and moon phases, suggesting that the timing of birth could influence the child's temperament. The group chuckles lightly, but the advice lingers. Folklore is inseparable from practice here. Rituals and superstitions coexist with technique, each giving structure to an unpredictable event. The mother groans sharply, muscles trembling, and the midwife leans closer, pressing her hands in just the right places, guiding the labor with practiced precision. Her voice is low but insistent, a mixture of instruction and reassurance. You notice how every subtle touch and word is calculated, every motion designed to maximize the mother's strength and minimize risk. Historians still debate whether the combination of ritual, herbs, and positioning materially improved birth outcomes. But in this room, watching the synchronized effort of women, objects, and techniques, you understand that psychological and physical support were inseparable. Together they form a delicate, powerful network that makes survival more likely, even in the harshest conditions. And as the mother arches again, gripping the stool, you sense the room holding its collective breath, every nerve tuned to the same frequency. The labor is far from over, but the patterns of care, faith, and skill have set the stage for the approaching climax, a moment where life and history converge in the candlelit chamber.
A faint crackle from the candle flame draws your attention to the shadows flickering along the walls. The mother leans heavily against the birthing stool, sweat beading her forehead and tracing lines down her neck. Every contraction twists her body, a living demonstration of endurance and determination. You notice the subtle interplay between her muscles and the midwife's hands. Gentle presses, nudges, adjustments, each calculated to coax the baby into position. It's a choreography honed over decades, a dance between instinct and learned skill. The midwife leans close, murmuring instructions timed to the mother's breathing. "Push with the next wave," she says softly, guiding her posture, adjusting her hips. Nearby, a small bowl of warm water is used to dab the mother's face and neck, cooling her skin, providing fleeting relief. You realize how every object in this room has a dual purpose: practical comfort and symbolic reassurance. Even the flickering candlelight, casting long shadows, seems to participate in the ritual, marking time in a world without clocks. You notice a peculiar charm dangling near the window, a tiny woven basket with threads of red, green, and white, believed to trap negative spirits before they could reach the mother. Quirky, perhaps, but in a setting defined by uncertainty, every precaution counts. Some women swear by these charms. Others view them as psychological aids, yet all participate in their placement and observation. Historians still debate whether such talismans had measurable impact, but their role in communal reassurance is undeniable. The circle hums a low tune, a sound that resonates in the mother's chest and seems to synchronize with her breathing. One woman strokes the mother's hair, another presses a compress of warm herbs against her lower back. The coordination is subtle yet precise, every movement designed to maximize comfort, minimize pain, and assist the natural process of labor. You notice the rhythmic sway of the mother's body, almost as if she is dancing to a melody only she can hear, guided by the collective energy of the room. The midwife reaches for a small bundle of herbs, crushing them between her fingers, releasing a pungent aroma into the air. Mugwort, rosemary, and a hint of lavender, each chosen for properties believed to ease contractions or provide spiritual protection. The mother inhales, grimacing slightly, but finding focus in the scent. A quirky bit of history surfaces in your mind. In some regions, midwives included parts of animals in such bundles, convinced they could transfer vitality or aid in the baby's passage. You stifle a nervous laugh. Modern aromatherapy seems almost tame in comparison. The mother groans louder, gripping the girdle and beads tightly, eyes squeezed shut. You realize how tactile objects, girdles, charms, beads, anchor her attention, giving her control amid chaos. The midwife's touch is precise, offering both physical guidance and emotional stability. Even as fatigue seeps into the room, the circle remains attentive, breathing in unison with the mother, humming, whispering, and occasionally chuckling at the quirks of superstition. The apprentice midwife observes quietly, scribbling mental notes, absorbing techniques for future use. Here, education is practical, immediate, and vital. A misstep could cost lives. You notice how skill, observation, and inherited wisdom converge in this small space, creating a network of care that transcends simple medical intervention. Someone murmurs about the phase of the moon affecting temperament and health. The older women chuckle softly, but no one dismisses it outright. Folklore and practical midwifery coexist seamlessly, forming a structured narrative around a chaotic, unpredictable event. Historians still argue whether medieval rituals, herbs, and positioning truly impacted outcomes. Yet, watching this room, you see that survival often depended less on science than on the combined efforts, focus, and creativity of an entire community. Every whisper, touch, and charm contributes to the delicate balance of life. The mother arches again, gripping the stool, muscles taut, breath ragged. You feel the tension ripple through the room. This moment is an intersection of centuries of practice, fear, hope, and sheer human will, and you realize that what unfolds here is as much about the endurance of tradition as it is about birth itself. The mother leans forward, sweat dripping from her temples, fingers clutching the birthing girdle as her body writhes in the throes of contraction. You can feel the tension in the room like a tangible force, thick and almost suffocating. Every groan, every tremor of her limbs, every subtle adjustment of the midwife's hands carries meaning. This is not merely labor. It is the culmination of months of preparation, instinct, and centuries of inherited wisdom. The midwife presses gently on the mother's lower back, guiding her through the contractions. "Push with the next wave," she murmurs, her voice low but insistent. The circle of women hums a steady rhythm, their voices a shared heartbeat that seems to synchronize with the mother's own breathing. Even the youngest apprentice in the room watches, absorbing techniques that no manual could fully convey. Historians still debate the effectiveness of these hands-on methods, but in practice, the coordination is mesmerizing. A subtle ritual unfolds simultaneously. Small bundles of herbs release pungent aromas, mugwort, lavender, rosemary, meant to relax the mother and ward off unseen spirits. Some remedies are stranger, traces of crushed animal parts, believed to aid in the baby's passage. Quirky as they may seem, these methods demonstrate the ingenuity and resourcefulness of medieval midwifery. You notice how the scent anchors the mother's attention, giving her something tangible to focus on amid pain and fatigue. The mother's groans rise, blending with the hum of the circle. She rocks slightly, guided by the midwife's hands and the rhythm of the women around her. Tiny gestures, a dab of warm water on her face, a compress at her back, a whispered reassurance, form an intricate choreography of care. Each act, no matter how minor, carries weight. Each helps the mother conserve energy, manage pain, or maintain focus. Someone murmurs a superstition about moon phases influencing the baby's temperament. Another suggests placing a small charm of coral near the mother's hand to protect against harm. The women exchange knowing glances, some amused, some solemn. In medieval labor, practical guidance and superstition were inseparable. each reinforcing the other, creating a structured framework for an otherwise unpredictable event. The mother shifts on the birthing stool, her muscles taut, her body trembling. The midwife presses lightly at the abdomen, guiding the baby into an optimal position. You notice the subtle cues, the flexing of the mother's toes, the tension in her shoulders, the tilt of her hips. Every detail matters. Every small adjustment can influence the course of labor. The young apprentice observes closely, memorizing gestures, pressure points, and timing. She sees the interplay of skill, instinct, and communal support, realizing that this room embodies a form of knowledge that is both tactile and spiritual. Mistakes could be fatal, yet the synchronized effort of the women demonstrates resilience, precision, and hope. The mother grips her beads and girdle tightly, whispering prayers under her breath. Her focus narrows to these tangible anchors, as if they absorb her fear and convert it into strength. The room seems to hold its collective breath, attuned to her every movement. Historians still debate whether rituals, charms, and poultices materially improved outcomes, but their psychological and communal value is undeniable. The candlelight flickers, casting long dancing shadows across the wooden walls. Sweat glistens on the mother's skin, the herb's aroma lingers, and the women's hum continues, forming a cocoon of concentrated energy and intent. The labor presses on, brutal and beautiful, a living testament to the endurance of women, tradition, and community. The labor presses on, stretching the night into an almost tangible weight that hangs over the room. The mother arches and rocks against the birthing stool, muscles taut and glistening with sweat. Her breaths come in ragged waves, punctuated by low groans and whispered prayers. You notice how her grip on the girdle tightens and loosens in rhythm with her body, a silent conversation between her instincts and the midwife's guidance. The midwife leans in, placing hands on the mother's lower back and abdomen. "Push with the next wave," she murmurs, her voice calm but insistent. The circle hums a low, steady tune, almost imperceptibly, yet its resonance seems to echo through the mother's body. Every gesture, every word, every touch is synchronized in a delicate ballet of endurance and skill. Historians still argue whether these coordinated techniques reduced complications or simply offered psychological reassurance. But in practice, the results are profound. You notice the aroma of crushed herbs, lavender, mugwort, and rosemary waft through the room, a pungent but strangely comforting mix. Some bundles contain more exotic, even unsettling, ingredients, like bits of animal bone or powdered roots. Quirky as it seems, these mixtures were believed to relax the womb, protect from spirits, or draw the baby down. The smell anchors the mother, a tangible point of focus amid the unrelenting contractions. The young apprentice watches from the corner, memorizing every motion. She sees how subtle adjustments, tilting the mother's hips, pressing the sacrum, adjusting the angle on the birthing stool, can alter the trajectory of the labor. Mistakes could be fatal, but precision and attentiveness here form a safety net. You notice the collective intensity. The room moves as one organism, responding to each shift in the mother's body. A woman in the circle offers a poultice of warm butter and herbs. Its scent is earthy and strong, and it is applied to the mother's lower abdomen. Folk wisdom holds that this can soften the womb, a belief that blends practical observation with spiritual reassurance. Other superstitions abound: charms of coral, tiny figurines, protective prayers whispered into ears. Each serves as both a psychological anchor and a symbolic gesture of safety. The mother's eyes squeeze shut, sweat dripping into her hair. She leans into the midwife's hands, rocking her hips, pushing instinctively. The hum of the circle continues, a low vibration that threads through the space, coordinating breaths, movements, and effort. You feel almost hypnotized by the rhythm, understanding that this multi-sensory approach, sound, touch, scent, ritual, is crucial to managing the extreme stress of childbirth. Someone whispers a superstition about avoiding mirrors lest the baby inherit bad fortune. The women chuckle softly, but no one dismisses it outright. Folklore and practical care coexist seamlessly. The mother's endurance is supported by both a network of guidance that spans both physical and spiritual domains. The mother arches again, gripping her beads and girdle. Her focus narrows to these tangible anchors, which seem to absorb fear and channel it into effort. The midwife presses gently, guiding her through contractions with expert hands. Every subtle shift, every whispered instruction, every herbal scent in the air is part of a choreography honed over generations. Historians still debate whether medieval remedies materially improved birth outcomes, but the psychological and communal effects are undeniable. You realize that survival here depends not just on physical skill, but on focus, trust, and shared knowledge. The room is a living network of support, a testament to centuries of accumulated wisdom. And as the mother rocks, her muscles trembling, the room holds its collective breath. Each contraction is a reminder of human resilience, ingenuity, and the power of communal care, a moment suspended in time where history, tradition, and life converge in a candlelit chamber. The room feels impossibly still and yet charged, every movement amplified by the mother's rhythm of labor. Her body rocks against the birthing stool, muscles taut, sweat glistening along her spine, hair plastered to her temples. You notice the subtle coordination of the midwife's hands, pressing, nudging, guiding, timing every gesture to coincide with the mother's contractions. It's a delicate balance, almost imperceptible, but crucial. Historians still debate how effective these precise touches were, yet their presence undeniably offers psychological reassurance to the mother and the women surrounding her. A low hum reverberates through the circle, a shared sound that mirrors the mother's breathing. The women sway gently, some stroking her back, others adjusting compresses of warm herbs. You realize that every act, no matter how minor, is part of a carefully orchestrated system. Even a dab of water on the mother's forehead or the gentle massaging of her shoulders contributes to maintaining focus, energy, and composure. The air is thick with the scent of crushed herbs, lavender, rosemary, mugwort, and occasionally something more pungent, like camphor. Quirky medieval remedies included unusual additives, powdered animal bones or dried roots, believed to aid in the baby's passage or protect the mother from malevolent spirits. The smells, though strange to modern senses, serve a practical purpose. They give the mother a tangible point of focus during the intensity of contractions. You notice the mother gripping the beads of her birthing girdle, the tactile sensation anchoring her attention. Objects like these, along with small figurines or charms, provide both comfort and a sense of control, essential in an era without anesthesia. A whispered prayer accompanies each contraction, blending faith with physical effort, creating a structured rhythm in an otherwise chaotic ordeal. The midwife leans closer, murmuring instructions timed with the mother's breathing. Push now, lean forward, follow the wave. Her hands press lightly at the sacrum, guiding the baby's descent. Every movement is precise, and the young apprentice observes with rapt attention, absorbing the nuances of hand placement, timing, and coordination. You realize how critical this apprenticeship is, learning by seeing and doing in a setting where mistakes could be fatal. Someone in the circle quietly mentions the moon phase, suggesting it may influence the child's temperament. A charm of coral is pressed into the mother's palm for protection. The women exchange knowing glances. The coexistence of superstition and practical care forms a consistent framework for action, combining hope, ritual, and skill. Historians still debate the tangible effect of these beliefs, but in the moment, they clearly bolster confidence and morale. The mother arches again, muscles trembling, groaning with the force of another contraction. The midwife presses gently at her lower back, the circle humming softly to maintain a rhythm that aligns with the body's natural movements. Each small intervention, a warm compress, a dab of water, a whispered encouragement, works in concert to support endurance and channel energy. Her body is taut, focused, and resilient. The room breathes with her, a single organism of touch, sound, scent, and ritual. Even amidst exhaustion, the mother's instinct drives her movements, guided by hands, words, and objects surrounding her. You notice the careful interplay between skill and superstition, science and folklore, each reinforcing the other in subtle, powerful ways. Historians still debate the efficacy of herbs, poultices, and charms in actual survival outcomes. Yet sitting here, witnessing the coordinated efforts, you understand that the combination of communal support, ritual, and skill creates an environment in which both mother and child have a better chance of thriving. And as another contraction grips her, muscles trembling, beads slipping through her fingers, the room holds its collective breath. This is labor as both endurance and ritual, pain and hope, human ingenuity and tradition converging in a candlelit chamber. The night stretches on, but the pattern is clear. Every touch, every hum, every charm is part of the living choreography that brings life into the world. The candle flames flicker, casting long shadows that dance across the walls as the mother rocks against the birthing stool. Her muscles are taut, sweat glistening along her back and temples, her breathing ragged yet determined. You can feel the tension in the room, almost like a physical presence, binding everyone to the rhythm of her labor. The midwife's hands glide with precision over the mother's lower back and abdomen, applying gentle pressure, guiding, coaxing, timing every movement with the contractions. Historians still debate the degree to which these manipulations improved outcomes, but the psychological reassurance is unmistakable. A low hum threads through the circle of women, a shared vibration that seems to synchronize with the mother's breathing. One woman presses a warm compress to her back, another dabs her forehead with water, while the midwife murmurs instruction and encouragement. Even the youngest apprentice watches with rapt attention, absorbing every detail for future practice. This collective effort demonstrates how experience, intuition, and careful observation create a living, breathing safety net. The scent of herbs, lavender, rosemary, and mugwort fills the air, mingling with sweat and candle smoke. Some women add stranger ingredients like powdered roots or fragments of animal bone, believing these would encourage the baby's passage or ward off malevolent spirits. Quirky as it may seem, the aroma serves a practical purpose, providing the mother with a tangible focus amidst the intensity of labor. You inhale cautiously, noting how the smell seems to anchor attention and foster concentration. The mother clutches her birthing girdle and beads tightly, whispering prayers under her breath. These objects are more than symbolic. They provide tactile comfort and a sense of control, grounding her amid pain. The midwife's hands continue to adjust posture and pressure, subtly nudging the baby downward with each contraction. Every touch is precise, informed by decades of experience, a balance of care and physical intervention. Someone in the circle mentions a superstition about the moon and the baby's temperament. A small coral charm is placed in the mother's palm for protection. These rituals coexist seamlessly with practical assistance, offering reassurance while reinforcing focus. Historians still argue whether charms, poultices, or folk remedies materially improved outcomes, but their psychological and communal value is evident. The mother's cries rise with the next contraction echoing off the walls. Her body moves instinctively, swaying, rocking, pressing against the midwife's hands. The circle hums, compresses are applied, and whispered guidance continues. You realize that medieval childbirth was a full sensory experience: sound, touch, scent, faith, and humor blending to create both physical and psychological support. The apprentice midwife observes carefully, noting the subtleties of timing, touch, and coordination. Mistakes could be deadly, yet the room functions as a single organism, each person anticipating the mother's needs. Objects, gestures, and rituals, herbs, girdles, charms, prayers, interweave with skill and observation, creating a complex network of support. Sweat streams down the mother's face, her muscles taut with effort. The room holds its collective breath, attuned to every tremor, every groan, every subtle cue. Here, labor is as much communal and ritualistic as it is physical, a delicate interplay of endurance, tradition, and human ingenuity. And as the mother presses through another contraction, you feel the rhythm of the night, the pulse of centuries of women guiding and witnessing, a testament to resilience and the enduring power of community in bringing life into the world. The hours weigh heavily now, yet the mother's body continues its relentless dance of labor. Her back arches, sweat glistening along the curves of her shoulders, her breaths sharp and uneven. You notice the coordination between her instinctive movements and the midwife's subtle guidance, hands pressing at the sacrum, adjusting the angle of her hips, nudging the baby with gentle but deliberate pressure. Every detail is a study in precision, a testament to the knowledge accumulated through generations. Historians still debate the exact efficacy of these methods, yet the confidence they inspire is undeniable. A soft hum threads through the circle of women, low and steady, matching the rhythm of her breath. Each woman contributes, some pressing warm compresses to her back, others offering whispered encouragement or adjusting her posture. You can feel the subtle, almost imperceptible ways the room's energy ebbs and flows in response to her labor, creating a network of support, both physical and psychological. The scent of herbs, lavender, mugwort, rosemary fills the room, mingling with candle smoke and the sweat of exertion. Some women sprinkle powdered roots or fragments of animal bone, ancient folk remedies thought to aid in labor or protect against unseen spirits. Quirky as these might seem, their practical effect may have been secondary to the psychological comfort they provided. You notice how each scent anchors the mother's attention, giving her something tangible to focus on amid overwhelming pain. The mother grips her beads and girdle tightly, whispering prayers with each contraction. The tactile sensation of the objects, combined with whispered guidance from the midwife, grounds her. Every movement, Every adjustment of posture, every application of heat or pressure contributes to a delicate balance of support. Even as fatigue deepens, the room remains attentive, a living organism attuned to the mother's body. Someone whispers about the influence of moon phases on the baby's temperament. A small charm of coral is placed in her hand for protection. Folklore and practical skill coexist seamlessly here, each reinforcing the other. Historians still argue the real impact of charms or rituals, yet their value in focus, morale, and psychological resilience is obvious. The mother's cries intensify as another contraction hits. The midwife leans closer, adjusting the position of her hands and murmuring encouragement. The circle hums in response, a low vibration threading through the room, coordinating breaths and movement. You notice how every small action, a dab of water, a warm compress, a whispered reassurance, helps the mother maintain control over her body and mind. The apprentice observes intently, taking in every gesture, every subtle shift of weight, every pressure point. This apprenticeship is vital, learning by doing in a context where mistakes can be fatal. Skill, intuition, and communal support converge, demonstrating the interdependence of experience, observation, and ritual. Sweat drips down the mother's temples and neck. Her muscles tremble, her focus narrowing entirely to her body, the midwife's hands, and the tactile reassurance of beads and girdle. The room's collective breath seems to pulse with hers. This is labor as ritual, skill, endurance, and shared human effort, a vivid illustration of medieval birth practices. And as the mother arches again, trembling with effort, you feel the room's concentrated energy, a tapestry of tradition, superstition, and hands-on expertise poised on the brink of a miraculous transition, the final passage from gestation to birth. The tension in the room thickens, each contraction stretching the mother's endurance to its limits. She leans forward on the birthing stool, muscles taut, sweat streaming down her face, and you notice the subtle choreography of the midwife's hands, pressing, nudging, guiding, timing every movement with precision. The room hums, literally and figuratively, as the circle of women mirrors the rhythm of her breathing, offering support through touch, sound, and presence. Historians still debate whether these coordinated techniques materially improved survival, yet their psychological effect is undeniable. The mother's grip on the birthing girdle tightens and loosens with the ebb and flow of contractions. Every subtle shift, every sway, every whispered instruction counts. One woman applies a warm herbal compress to her back. Another offers a damp cloth to her brow. The low hum continues, threading through the room like a gentle current, harmonizing with the mother's movements. It is a multi-sensory support system, centuries old, designed to sustain endurance in a world without anesthesia. Herbs release their pungent, earthy scent into the candlelit room. Lavender, rosemary, and mugwort blend with the natural odors of sweat and candle wax. Some mixtures include powdered roots or even fragments of animal bone, thought to aid labor or protect from malevolent spirits. Quirky as it may sound, the smells anchor the mother's attention, giving her focus amid the intensity of pain. You can almost see the collective concentration in the faces surrounding her, each act of care amplified by centuries of tradition. The midwife leans in, pressing at the sacrum, guiding the baby's descent with careful precision. The apprentice watches closely, memorizing the subtle movements, the timing, and the coordination of hands and voices. Mistakes could be fatal. Here, knowledge is transferred through observation, touch and oral instruction. You realize how vital this apprenticeship is, not just for the survival of mother and child, but for the continuity of centuries of accumulated midwifery knowledge. Someone murmurs a superstition about the moon influencing temperament. A small coral charm is pressed into the mother's hand. Ritual and skill coexist seamlessly, each reinforcing the other, offering psychological support that is as critical as any physical intervention. Historians still argue about the tangible effect of charms, poultices, or folk remedies, but the communal and psychological impact is undeniable. The mother arches again, muscles trembling, sweat pooling along her spine. Her groans echo, mingling with the soft hum and whispers of guidance. Every touch, every dab of water, every warm compress, every whispered encouragement channels her focus and energy. Even the candlelight seems to pulse with the rhythm of labor, a subtle witness to the unfolding drama. Her beads slip through her fingers as she leans into the midwife's hands. Ritual, skill, endurance, and communal support converge. The room is a living organism responding to her every tremor, every groan, every subtle shift in posture. You feel the weight of history in this moment, a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and the collective power of women in childbirth. And as another contraction grips her, muscles taut and trembling, you sense the final stretch approaching. The room holds its collective breath, poised on the brink of transition, where labor and tradition meet the miracle of life. The room feels electric now, every contraction a tangible wave that ripples through the mother, the midwife, and the circle of women. Her muscles are taut, sweat dripping from her temples and spine, every breath shallow and urgent. You notice the choreography between instinct and guidance, the midwife's hands pressing, nudging, adjusting, the mother responding with subtle shifts of hips, sway, and breath. Historians still debate the exact efficacy of these techniques, but in practice, the psychological reassurance they provide is clear. The mother grips the beads of her birthing girdle, focusing on the tactile rhythm as if they were a lifeline. The low hum of the women's voices threads through the room, almost synchronizing with her breathing, creating a collective cadence of endurance. You see how small gestures, a dab of cool water, a compress at the lower back, whispered encouragement, work in concert, reinforcing focus and stamina. The scent of herbs, lavender, rosemary, mugwort, mingles with sweat and candle smoke. Some women add unusual ingredients, powdered roots, fragments of animal bone, remnants of crushed flowers. Folk remedies like these were believed to aid labor or ward off spirits. Quirky though they seem, the aromas provide a tangible focus, a sensory anchor in the overwhelming intensity of childbirth. The midwife leans close, pressing at the sacrum and gently guiding the baby downward. The apprentice observes intently, memorizing the interplay of touch, timing, and coordination. Mistakes could be deadly. This hands-on training is both immediate and critical. You notice how experience, ritual, and communal support converge into a system designed to maximize survival long before modern medicine formalized such practices. Someone in the circle murmurs a superstition about moon phases, and a small coral charm is placed in the mother's palm. Ritual and practical skill intertwine, each reinforcing the other. Historians still debate whether such beliefs materially affected outcomes, but in this chamber, their psychological and communal function is undeniable. The mother arches sharply, groaning as another contraction hits. Sweat streams down her face, and she rocks instinctively, guided by the midwife's hands. The room hums, Compresses are applied, water is dabbed, and prayers are whispered. Every intervention, however minor, channels focus, energy, and courage into the labor. You notice the mother's concentration narrowing entirely to her body, her beads, the midwife's hands, and the tactile sensations around her. Ritual, skill, and instinct blend seamlessly here, guiding her through the final stages. The apprentice observes every detail, storing the knowledge that centuries of midwives have accumulated. And now, with each contraction, the room seems to hold its collective breath. Every heart is aligned with hers, every gesture, every hum, every charm poised to support the final push. The threshold of life, pain, endurance, and tradition converges. You can feel history itself vibrating through the chamber as the birth reaches its climax. The mother's body tenses, trembling with the force of another contraction, and you feel the room tighten around her like a living organism. Sweat drips down her temples and spine, and her breaths come in shallow, ragged waves. Every subtle shift of her hips, every flex of her muscles is guided by the midwife's hands, pressing, nudging, supporting, coaxing. Centuries of practice are embedded in these gestures. Historians still debate the precise impact of such manual interventions, yet their psychological and practical significance is beyond doubt. The hum of the women in the circle threads through the air, a low, steady vibration that synchronizes with the mother's breathing. Each touch, each whispered instruction, each gentle adjustment of posture contributes to the delicate rhythm of labor. You notice the way the midwife alternates her focus between physical guidance and reassurance, blending skill and empathy. Even the youngest apprentice watches attentively, absorbing lessons that no book could convey. Herbs and poultices scent the room, lavender, rosemary, and mugwort mingling with sweat and candle smoke. Occasionally, more unusual additives, powdered roots, fragments of animal bone, lend their pungent notes, believed to aid labor or protect from spirits. Quirky as these methods may appear to modernize, they anchor the mother's focus, providing comfort and familiarity amid intense physical exertion. The mother grips her beads tightly, whispering prayers. Objects, rituals, and tactile sensations become extensions of her will, tools to channel her energy and sustain concentration. The midwife applies pressure to the sacrum, nudges the hips, and times guidance with each contraction. The apprentice observes silently, memorizing gestures, pressure points, and verbal cues, a transfer of knowledge that has ensured survival across generations. Someone murmurs about the moon phase affecting the child's temperament. A small coral charm is pressed into her hand. Folk wisdom and practical skill coexist seamlessly, each reinforcing the other. Historians still argue over whether such charms materially impacted outcomes, yet their communal and psychological value is undeniable. The mother arches again, muscles trembling, beads slipping through her fingers. The room holds its collective breath, every gesture calibrated to aid her endurance. Compressed hands, whispered prayers, and the low hum of the circle combine to create a living, breathing support system. Ritual, skill, instinct, and endurance intersect in a shared purpose, bringing life safely into the world. With one final determined push, the baby begins to emerge. The midwife's hands guide delicately, the circle leans in, and the room vibrates with anticipation. The culmination of pain, hope, skill, and tradition reaches its apex. You feel the weight of centuries in this single, charged moment, the convergence of experience, instinct, and communal care culminating in the miracle of birth. The child's first cry pierces the room, and relief floods every face. The mother exhales, trembling but alive, while the midwife gently wipes the newborn, wrapping it in linen. The circle exhales collectively, a mixture of fatigue, exhilaration, and awe. Here, in the candlelit chamber, life continues, sustained by tradition, skill, and the enduring resilience of women. The room gradually softens as the tension ebbs, leaving behind a gentle warmth that settles over everyone. The mother reclines, muscles still trembling, sweat cooling on her skin. The baby lies swaddled in linen, its tiny chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. The midwife's hands move with a quiet deliberateness, tidying, wiping, comforting, while the circle hums softly, a lullaby to accompany the transition from effort to rest. You notice how even the flickering candlelight seems to slow, casting longer, calmer shadows that stretch across the walls like a protective embrace. Every scent, the lingering herbs, the faint smoke, the earthy aroma of the room carries a memory of effort, endurance, and ritual. You realize how integral these sensory details were, providing both comfort and structure to a process that could otherwise feel overwhelming. Objects like the beads, the girdle, and the small charms, once central to focus during labor, now sit quietly, their purpose fulfilled, silent witnesses to a passage both painful and miraculous. The mother cradles her child, her touch tentative but instinctive, a soft murmur of awe escaping her lips. The apprentice watches in awe, absorbing lessons not just of technique, but of patience, presence, and the subtle ways care and ritual intertwine. You reflect on how centuries of accumulated wisdom converge in such moments, how hands, voices, and hearts work together in a living choreography of survival and support. Outside, the night remains deep and quiet. You can almost imagine the soft rustle of leaves, the distant sound of animals settling, the gentle pulse of life continuing beyond the chamber walls. Inside, the tension that held the room taut now melts into a calm, comforting stillness. This is a world where skill and instinct meet ritual and community, creating a space where even the most intense human experiences, pain, fear, hope, can be guided safely toward life. As your own breathing slows, you imagine the mother's relief, the child's first moments, the quiet pride of the midwife, and the apprentice's absorption of generations of knowledge. The candlelight flickers once more, shadows dancing softly. As the room exhales, life has begun anew, resilient and enduring, and you feel a subtle, lingering sense of awe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let yourself drift, carrying the gentle rhythm of history and human perseverance into your own rest. The candle fades slowly, the hum continues faintly, and you sink into the calm aftermath of centuries-old endurance, ritual, and care.